Okay. So, this talk is called The Future of Personal AI. The goal of this talk is to bring everybody up to speed with the very latest developments of where AI is today, and to sort of show what is about to come. This is very much part 2 of the talk that I did about 7 months ago in the Volcano Summit. It continues the story. And interestingly, that talk at the Volcano Summit was done 2 weeks before GPT-4 came out. So, so much has happened since then, and there's so much to talk about. So where do we begin? Well, 2023 was quite a year. And one thing we've learned is that everybody really wants to talk to their computers. So much so that since GPT did voice chat, people are now talking to their computers in their cars every day. This guy's not the only one. There's many of them. So this feels like a huge step forward towards the goal of personal AI, but there's so many problems here. The first one is we're not actually talking to our computer, we're talking to OpenAI's computer. The second one is ChatGPT doesn't currently know anything about us. And the third one is that the LLMs that are based, the technology that ChatGPT is based upon, cannot be trusted to take any actions on our behalf at the moment. So the big question that everybody in AI is asking right now is how do we get from here to the goal of her? To do that, we're going to need reliable AI agents. AI agents that know how to use tools, like ones you've already probably used when you're using ChatGPT. But not just simple tools like finds and flights, because these tools are currently read-only. And what we're looking for is tools that can actually perform actions on our behalf. So whether it's writing today's weather forecast to a file or booking a flight to Berlin, we want tools and agents that can solve problems themselves. An agent just basically breaks down a task into little chunks. You can think of agents as doing these basic tasks like this. But the real goal of agents is to make them self-reflective, able to ponder what's actually happening and auto-correct along the way. If they don't know something, they should be able to ask for clarification. And really, what we want to do is get to the point where we can trust these agents with some money, so they can do useful things on our behalf. Kerman Coley, in this amazing blog post, talks about the next big crypto narrative. And a big part of this is AI agents. He calls them, basically, he says that LLMs are basically kids with your credit card. So another thing we want from agents is the ability to run 24/7. We want them to run in the background, wake up and do something, go back to sleep, and do all of that without actually taking up too much power. Agents will change the way we interact with LLMs from just a pull interaction as we have at the moment, where we're just talking to our LLM, to one where LLMs are actually pushing notifications to us. So, for example, they'll be able to join our Telegram groups and Urbit groups. And then if they're watching this group day in, day out, and they see something interesting, like, for example, a friend is going to come and visit in London, I would get a notification on my phone. Fortunately, DALL-E still can't do text properly. But where are we today with all of this? Well, a lot of money has been spent on AI agents. It is the hottest topic in AI at the moment. Huge amounts of funding are going to big players like Adept, Multion, and Imbu. But all of these are still currently following the traditional SaaS model, the idea of basically spending so much a month. What we're looking for, of course, is some open source alternatives. And there are plenty of them. AutoGPT being the biggest. They like to say that a lot. And all of these are currently following something called the agent protocol. a way for agents to be able to talk to each other using a common REST interface. But there's one big problem with all of this. Unfortunately, they don't work. They don't work for a few reasons. One of them is that LLMs are non-deterministic. That means that when you run the same thing twice, you never get the same result. They work in terms of probabilities. So it's almost impossible to get the same output twice, which is great for creative tasks, but not so much at giving precise instructions. The big problem with this, of course, is that English as a language is very inexact. Natural language is nice and fun to talk to computers with, but it's very ambiguous. You could take this sentence in two ways. The other thing with LLMs is that the order that you type things in actually changes the result that you get. So just by moving the sentence around, you get a very different output. So it's for that reason that I think code will still be here for some time to come, because the whole point of code is that you run it in a particular order and it executes the same way twice and every other time. Another problem we have with LLMs is that they are memory constrained. ChatGPT appears to have a memory, but it's actually only an illusion. Really, it only knows about the last few messages that you've told it. And the reason for that is something called the context window that these LLMs have. They're just not very big. At the moment, we've got ChatGPT with about 35,000, I think, and then Claude with about 100,000 tokens, which is about 75,000 words. But once you go over that 75,000 words, it no longer knows what you're talking about. So that means that agents currently forget the original task. So there are many workarounds to this. The biggest one is called RAG. RAG is a way of actually bringing fresh data, up-to-date data into your LLM, but it also helps relieve this problem. There's also something called MEMGPT. And then I also, with researching this, came across this other way, which is basically using LLMs to condense down huge amounts of data into more condensed data, condensed prose, which is very interesting. But all of these are hacks, and honestly, they feel to me a bit like colored coins do when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum. You know, we're just waiting for that next big thing to actually sort of hit, which will make a lot of these problems go away. And so far, we're only talking about an agent doing one task. How do we coordinate hundreds of agents? Well, we're going to need something like an agent OS. Now, there's two that I know about at the moment. One is called Shinkai, and I found out about this thanks to the amazing Network Age podcast. So I know about as much of this as you do if you've listened to this episode. And then the other one I know a lot better is one by Lucas called Agent OS. And Agent OS, I believe, is really built with the sort of proper foundational principles that we're going to need to make personal AI a reality. And if I'd suggest you do one thing today, it's to check out the manifesto on GitHub. Okay, so this is pretty much where we're up to today. Let's be realistic, we've got a long way to go. But these companies who are researching personal AI, they're not messing around. They're actually receiving some of the biggest checks in the valley at the moment. So I'm going to operate for the rest of this talk on the assumption that these problems that we've talked about are going to get fixed. And assuming that is the case, we need to start asking the question, what else do we want out of personal AI? Well, personal AI is going to need your personal data. Now, I've never watched Black Mirror, but I've heard a lot about it. And one of the things I've heard when I told someone about this idea, that you're going to install an app on your phone and an app on your computer, double-click it, and straight away it's going to start looking through all of your files, scanning it, indexing it, is that apparently this is also an episode. Well, I think it's going to happen very soon. Because really what we've got is an inevitability that these personal LLMs are going to need your personal data. And it won't just know your personal data, and sure, it's going to know everything about it, but these personal LLMs will also know how to talk to you, because they can see all the messages that you've had from the various people in your life. So some people will prefer to be talked to this way, and other people who actually, want to get something done are going to want this instead. And the LLM will be able to know exactly how to phrase things to you. This is coming very soon. And as I started making this presentation 2 weeks ago, in that time I saw this startup launch, which is actually already plugging into all of your cloud data, your Microsoft Cloud and Gmail and all the rest of it. So we need to ask ourselves, if this is coming soon, what do we want out of personal AI? Well, there's a few things. We want it to augment our skills, but it needs to know what we learn already. It needs to know what we know. It needs to know how to teach us new skills as well, based upon the things it knows that we know. So using data from the past to basically change how it teaches us in the future. It needs to know our styles and tastes, what sort of colors and fonts we want, and it knows how to cheer us up as well. So if you think about all of this, things like infinite patience, so that if we mess up and go wrong, it still talks to us and doesn't delete all the data and things like that. Some people are calling these attributes things that we want in a digital clone. But if you really think about these things, well, these are really things that you'd want in a partner. And therefore, I think far from thinking of these as digital clones, we should start thinking about these as digital partners. In fact, I think these personal AIs are going to be our most intimate relationship. And herein lies the problem. To get the most out of our digital partner, we're going to have to tell it everything. Because an LLM that doesn't know something can never be as good as one that knows everything. But that data needs to live somewhere. And this is the problem. 20 years in the tech industry have shown us what happens when large companies own all of your data. And it wasn't so bad when it was scattered around in different silos, but it's going to be truly horrific when it all starts to live in one place. We really must not let this happen. So the good news is that help is on the way. Nobody has a problem talking to their computer so long as it's actually processed on device. The problem we have is when we're speaking to our computer and it's continually going to the cloud. This is the real problem. The good news is that local LLMs are catching up fast with the likes of ChatGPT. In fact, if you've got an M1 or M2 Mac like this one is here, you can actually download something called Ollama and start using your own local LLM right away today. You don't need to compile anything, it double-click and it works straight away. You can start using the Llama model that Facebook came out with, Meta. The only problem with this, of course, is that just like ChatGPT, it has been slightly crippled to not be too offensive to anyone, to the point where it's pretty much useless. But never fear, there is something called Llama Uncensored, which, thanks to my friend Jared, who's been helping train this thing, you can now install on your computer. So if you have a Mac, a powerful Mac today, just type in Ollama, run Llama 2 Uncensored, and you'll be able to use this immediately. But things have got even better since I discovered this, because now there's another model called Mistral, which again is an open source model from a team in Paris. And if you download this, lmstudio.ai, you're able to use both the Llama Uncensored model and the Mistral model today on your Mac, and it's really, really fast. So things are improving and looking up. The good thing about local LLMs are when people realize just how amazing this is, they're going to everyone's going to have one basically on their computer. The good thing about them is that you don't need any Wi-Fi. It works offline. You don't get rate limited. You can ask it questions all day long. You don't have to pay for them, a monthly subscription. And of course, most of all, there's no snooping by Google or from anyone else of what you're actually asking. So local LLMs mean that when you have them, you need to use search engines and so on a lot less. So this already feels like the first stage of having personal AI on my computer, on my device. But of course, these personal AIs won't exist in a vacuum. They're going to be networked together. And when that happens, that's going to change how we do things like calendaring, trip planning, restaurant visits, and all the rest of it. In fact, on the OpenAI website, there's already basically a demonstration of how this will work. Okay, but imagine you wanting to go for a meal. Well, you've got 4 people, and they've all got confusing different sort of allergies and all the rest of it. Well, basically, what you're going to be able to do is the LLMs will talk to each other and work out sensible ways of actually resolving these conflicts and work out a restaurant that's going to fit everything together. But if you're going to go and expose this copy of your brain to the network, this digital copy, there's one thing for sure: it had better be secure. Our digital partners are going to know more about us than we do because they all have infinite memory, and my memory is certainly not infinite. By continually referencing things that we've done in the past, they will gain our trust quickly. So for the bare minimum, we need some form of encrypted memory. But that's not enough. We also need context and person-aware security. We need to know who's asking a question and what we should be able to tell them. The biggest threat by far is not actually that of hacking. It's that of the influence that these models will have upon us to direct every facet of our behavior, everything that we want to buy and everything that we believe in. Every single purchasing decision in the future will be guided by our personal AIs. And the surface area for manipulation here is massive. So we're going to need some solid foundations to build this on. I was really encouraged over the last few days to see some of the talks here, including one by Seth over here with Archetype. Archetype's aiming to be the first package manager that actually means that you can trust everything that you build on top of it, and that there's no chance of someone basically rug pulling dependency later down the line. It's exactly the sort of new paradigm that we need to build this sort of thing on. It's going to take a while to think about the security necessary to build something this important on, but at a bare minimum, these are some things off the top of my head that we need. Most of all, when we think about personal AI, the most important thing is that we have to feel like it has our back. But the question is, how do you care? How do you make people care about privacy? How do you make them download an open source solution when something from Google or Microsoft will be free and much faster and better? Most likely, because that's what happens with centralized solutions. Unfortunately, the past hasn't really given us much to go on. Something like Graphene, which tries to be a private mobile phone operating system, hasn't really got very far. But there is one thing that people always respond well to: making money. And we're about to find out just how valuable our data really is. Many of you already know that Teslas have the full self-driving capability, especially in the United States. Prior to FSD 11, every rule in that FSD beta software was hard-coded by a human. So a human would write, every time you see a red stoplight, you need to stop. Every time, and so on. And the whole, 40,000 rules or whatever it is of all the possibilities. But interestingly, in August this year, totally bypassed by most people, Elon did this drive in FSD 12. And FSD 12 is very different because there are no rules in FSD 12 of what to do with stoplights, traffic lights, or anything else. In fact, the way that this works is because Tesla took the thousands of hours, millions of hours, I think it was, of footage from all the cars driving around, and they crunched it all on this supercomputer, and at the end of it, the computers basically learned how to drive from scratch by just following all of the hours of footage it's seen. So now, there's no human lines of code saying that you need to stop at a red light. In fact, the interesting thing that's happened is that they've also The car's now driving like a human. It's not stopping at a stoplight. It's slowing down and going off and doing all sorts of crazy things that humans do. So now they're having to narrow the data training set for this reason. The point I'm trying to make is that no other car company can make FSD12 because they don't have the data. Data is everything now. Meta makes the Llama 2 model and it shares the code and weights, but it doesn't share the data that it's trained on, the Facebook data. There are open data repositories, but what AI researchers are realizing that the biggest problem we have now is that we're going to start running out of human-generated data at some point. So your data is insanely valuable. And while most people will still prefer to keep things private, especially if they don't need the money, I think if we do have a technology like Privacy Guard that I talked about at the last talk, then wouldn't it be nice if at least you had the option of selling some of your data? Wouldn't it be nice if you're using your personal AI and you had messages like this popping up? Bear in mind that you're already giving it away to free to all of these companies anyway and getting nothing back in return. So wouldn't it be great if you could start making money from your own data? Now, I talked to Ted about this yesterday. He was a little bit skeptical. Thinks, for various reasons, you're not going to get paid too much. Fair enough. But we got to start somewhere. And the thing is that the money that you earn from this goes directly into your pocket. Or you can spend it on cloud services, because no matter how good your local personal AI is, you're still going to want to use cloud services somewhere. It'd be nice if your personal AI, when you give it a task, if it gives you the option to run privately, basically, which is going to take some time, or fast on some sort of local cloud. And I do think that over time, cloud services will prefer crypto. I think this is a really good use case for crypto for the simple reason that there's no chargebacks. So I think there are going to be a lot of personal AI competitors next year. In fact, you're hearing maybe about it for one of the first times here. Expect to hear about personal AI continually throughout next year. It's going to be the next big thing. So to get ahead in this game, my advice to anyone doing it is pay your users from day one. Start making sure they appreciate that their data is valuable and give them some money. Just for a laugh, I just thought it'd be fun to take this box and just think, if you had this now and you installed personal AI on it, wouldn't it be cool if you had like some little counter telling you how much money you've made? Things like this, this is what made Helium popular. Things like this, I think, is the way that we get private AI into the hands of people. Okay, so how are you going to interact with this thing? Well, there's this amazing blog post, so underappreciated, called All About AI Interfaces into the Future by Vishnu Menon. Amazing read. And in it, he says what I kind of guess we all sort of feel is that we don't want multiple interfaces into our chat box. If you go back to the talk I gave in the Volcano Summit, I talked a lot about custom interfaces that are drawn on the fly to your preferences, and I think that will be the future. The more we talk to these LLMs, the less we're going to need apps and websites. So, it's just obvious that the next thing that OpenAI is going to do is, as you're talking to your computer, it will start showing you pictures and images and videos and so on. Now, I think there's an enormous appetite for something new. We're all completely sick of the web at the moment. It's just not going anywhere. We've absolutely had enough. And if I have to install one more parking app on my phone just to be able to park, it's like we really, really need a change here. And I think we'll have it. And in fact, so much so that I think in 10 years' time, the next generation will look at the grandfathers and grandmothers who are booking things in their apps and laugh at the fact that they're still doing everything manually. Phones and desktops are not the only way, of course. Obviously, we're seeing some huge progress when it comes to VR. And there's a whole new generation of new AI devices which are coming out, including this humane pin that somehow projects things onto your hands. Don't fully get this one yet. But the biggest by far, and I really want to mention it, is Tab by Avi. Tab is really I think the first idea at making some sort of personal AI device, it came out a few weeks ago. And this is basically something that you hang around your neck, and it starts listening to conversations. Of course, there's going to be many times that we can't actually speak to our devices. We're in a crowded subway and so on, and typing is too slow. So where do we go next? Well, we're going to need something faster. Already, Elon Musk is playing around with Neuralink, but I think Neuralink is going to be seen as the landlines of this brain technology. If you look at where the research is going, so much now is showing that we're able to detect brain waves externally without having to wire anything into your brain. So I think this is going to be the next, sort of big thing when it comes to actually working how we can interface with our personal AI. And I think ultimately researchers will come to the inevitable conclusion that vibration and resonance are key. So back to 2023. How are we going to live in this crazy new world? And also, how crazy is this image? It's like, this was AI generated in seconds, and I just can't believe how far we've come in a matter of literally like 6 months. So we're going to be living in a new era where we're listening to podcasts made by Wondercraft, which are all AI generated with AI voices. We're going to be listening to audio, which is AI generated with stable audio. We're going to be making React websites just straight away from Figma without having to write any code. We're going to be looking at messages which are summarized by ChatGPT, by LLMs all the time. And in the process of researching personal AI, I just thought, curiously, what on earth is going to be at personal.ai? And guess what? It's something where you can actually talk, like you're messaging someone, but it's the AI actually replying. Can you believe it? So, as this amazing blog post says, we are going to go AI crazy for sure. And it's kind of clear what our new roles are going to be here. We are going to become supervisors and tastemakers. Yes, AI generated all the images you see here, pretty much, but somebody had to pick them out. And having the taste of knowing what works when is still going to be a key human role that isn't going to go away. We're all going to have to adjust to this new era of permanence as well. With products like Rewind and Tab, well, we're going to soon be having conversations and assume that something is recording them and that something is going to be saving into their LLM for the end of time. One thing for sure, if you're confused about which AI startups to invest in, you could skip the whole thing together, I think, and just simply invest in digital detox experiences. Because one thing for sure, these things are going to be really, really big in the future. So on one hand, what we're about to enter is a new era, which is a complete change. But on the other hand, things continue, as always. We're still going to care about the same things we've always done. We're still going to have our brain worrying about the same things that it's always been worrying about. We're still going to want more connection, more self-love, and dealing with the occasional existential crisis that we all go through. We're all going to pay any price, as we always have, for the things that we've wanted most of all: peace of mind. So AI will not fundamentally change the human experience, but like any technical revolution, it is going to accelerate everything that we can do in our days. Which makes me think, if we project far enough out into the future and we really think about this, well, what comes next after all of this? We know agents are coming. If personal AI is our most intimate relationship, aren't the best relationships meant to be surprising and exciting? Don't they introduce us to new experiences? Well, today our relationship with AI is very one-sided. It's not that dissimilar to the old London houses where the people live in the top and the slaves and the servants live below. Only that today's servant doesn't live below you. it lives in the living room, and you just give it commands. Well, if you think about what people are building today, things are going to get a lot more like this before they change. Which is why I think the next big thing after the AI agents that do exactly what we tell them to do will be the ones that don't. And I'm going to call this holistic AI, because this is what I'm actually excited in. Not just the turn my light on and book a travel plan, but something very new. Holistic AI takes every request that you give it and considers the whole picture. So for example, right now, interesting. For example, right now, I would really like to fly from London to San Francisco and stay there for a week to check out all the crazy stuff that's going on in AI over there. So if you gave that to a sort of AI agent, what would it do? It would do all the very basic, mundane things like this. But if you gave this to a really good, holistic AI agent, it would ask the question, why do you really want to go there? And try and uncover the layers behind that request. Holistic AI will propose alternatives that we never thought about by understanding the things that we care about, the higher goals that we all have in life. And it will help us accomplish the things that we want to do with the remaining time that we have on this earth. Holistic AI will help us consume less because it will find more joyful ways of doing the things that we've always wanted to do, things that we told the AI about 3 or 4 years ago and have totally forgotten, or things that we wrote in an email 8 years ago, which it's now processed and knows about. So, for example, rather than going direct from London to San Francisco, maybe it'd be far more fun for me to go and visit someone who stays in Austin, Texas, learn Hoon from them, teach them something I know, and then do a road trip to San Francisco. These are the sorts of things that it will be able to try with you, like different permutations of experiences. And once my personal AI knows me this well, it can propose ideas of new experiences to other AIs in what will become simulated experiences. So what's the one thing we all love doing the most in life? It's very simple, right? Writing a dating profile. Of course, it's literally the most awful thing to do because we have to describe ourselves and we never know exactly what to say. But our personal AI already knows everything about us, every sort of facet, every sort of feature and thing that we want. So it got me thinking, right, could we use LLMs, locally run, to do some sort of dating thing? Well, this is just a very, 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 very beginning of what I think will be a very interesting idea one day, where you can basically tell your local LLM so many facets and interesting things about you. In fact, actually, you don't tell it. It knows this anyway, because it sees everything. And then you can propose an experience and simulate that against whether you would like that or not. Of course, for this to work, your local LLM is going to need a lot of information about you, not just the 8 things I wrote in that thing, but probably about 800,000 different attributes, things that you want to do with your life. And the hope really here is that there's going to be some way of doing this and finding some sort of really good long-term relationship based on the formula that I really believe in, which is that the best long-term relationships have shared beliefs and values and complementary skills and personalities. If we can pull this off, then dating apps become a thing of the past, and no one's going to be sad about that. And it's not just dating that you can use this with as well. In fact, every flight, every gig you go to, and every conference you go to, there's always people that you could be meeting and having chats with, people who can really solve all the problems that you've been thinking about, but you just don't know who they are, so you never get to chat. And indeed, coming back to my first talk, this solves the problem with relative ratings, because it already knows what type of food you like in restaurants and how quiet you like it. So right now, there's various things that I want, and there's various things that you want in the audience. And I'm on stage, so you can see what they are, but most of the times, no one actually knows about these things. So ultimately, I think the real promise for me for holistic AI is that once we get interconnected personal AI working, we generate what I'm going to call a synchronicity machine. And this, to me, is very exciting. So much so that I've been trying to work out what I want to do for the coming years. And it took me a while, but with the help of this guy in the front row, Olivier, we're going to be working on a new startup called Wavelength. And the whole idea of Wavelength is to bring people, experiences, jobs, everything to you based on your wavelength, using ideas I've just been talking about. Okay, so finally, back to Mars. I've done this entire presentation without mentioning the word Urbit once. So what's this got to do with Urbit? Every so often, an opportunity lands in our lap. And I think for Urbit, that day is today. In some form or another, this personal AI world is definitely coming. And it is going to be your digital partner. And as open-minded as the Urbit community is, I really don't think anyone wants to be in a poly relationship with these guys. So if computing is about to become more intimate than ever, it is vital that we own and control every part of that computer. So I think this is Urbit's big moment. It's time to build a truly personal computer that we can trust. Thank you.